Hi guys, and welcome to Lent Day 40. So thank you to those of you who have been on this journey with me, but most of all I've just appreciated using this as an accountability way of actually getting through a full 40 days worth of readings for Lent for myself as well. Obviously we'll have one tomorrow with it being Easter Sunday, but today is called Holy Saturday. And today we're looking at the burial of Jesus through Matthew's Gospel, chapter 27, verses 57 to 66. When evening came, a rich man from Arimathea arrived. He was called Joseph, and he too was a disciple of Jesus. He went to Pilate and requested the body of Jesus. Pilate gave the order that it should be given to him. So Joseph took the body and wrapped it in a clean linen cloth. He laid it in his own new tomb, which he had carved out of the rock. Then he rolled a large stone across the doorway of the tomb and went away. Mary Magdalene was there, and so was the other Mary. They were sitting opposite the tomb. On the next day, that is the day after Preparation Day, the chief priests and the Pharisees went as a group to Pilate. "Sir," they said, "when that deceiver was still alive, we recall that he said after 3 days, 'I'll rise again.' So please give the order for the tomb to be made secure until the 3rd day. Otherwise his disciples might come and steal him away, and then tell the people he's been raised from the dead. And so the last deception would be worse than the first." "You can have a guard," said Pilate. "Go and make it as secure as you know how." So they went and made the tomb secure, sealing the stone and putting a guard on watch. I was never much good at chess, but I have from time to time played against some reasonably good players, and I remember what it felt like. There was always a point, usually quite early on, when I simply wouldn't understand what they were doing. They would move a rook here, a knight there, the queen somewhere else, and all without apparent connection or plan. Then, a few moves later, when I thought I was about to do something really clever, one of the pieces that had innocently been moved earlier on was there, blocking my way. The mark of a good player is to anticipate the moves the opponent is going to make and to block them before they can happen. That is more or less exactly what Matthew is doing in describing Jesus' burial. Of course, there is more to it than that. There is devotion, sorrow, awe. There is gratitude to Joseph of Arimathea for being in the right place at the right time. But in many ways, the burial story is actually an anticipation of the resurrection story. Matthew is moving the necessary chess pieces into place for the game he knows will take place. The central claim of the early church was, of course, that Jesus of Nazareth had been raised from the dead. The central claim wasn't that he was a great teacher, a powerful healer, or an inspiring leader, or that he was the victim of a gross miscarriage of justice. All of those were true, but they wouldn't add up to the early Christian faith and life. The crucial fact, they believed, was that Jesus had been bodily raised to life after being well and truly dead and buried. This is what they announced to startle the world of the Jews and Gentiles. And of course, people laughed at them and offered alternative explanations. He wasn't really dead, they said, or maybe the disciples stole the body, or maybe somebody else did, or perhaps the women went to the wrong tomb. These were all stock answers to the early Christian message, and we may suppose that from early on stock responses were developed, which then, like the skillful chess moves, could be made in advance, before the main story was even told, to rule out the wrong answers beforehand. So the first point is that the tomb was new, readily recognisable, and sealed with a large stone. We need to pause here for a moment because in most cultures today, people don't bury their dead in the way that they did in Jesus' day. Most Jews in Palestine at that time were buried in caves, sometimes underneath the houses where they had lived. The bodies weren't put in coffins or burnt to ashes, but wrapped in a cloth along with perfumes and spices. The body would then be put on a shelf or ledge inside the cave. Then, when the flesh had all decomposed, friends or relatives would collect the bones, fold them up neatly and put them in a bone box known as an ossuary. Often several bodies would be on ledges in the same tomb. In this case, as Matthew has carefully explained, the tomb was new and there were no other bodies in it. Grave robbery was common in the ancient world. So many cave tombs and huge circular stones, sometimes measuring as much as 2 meters in diameter, which people would roll across the mouth of the cave to prevent anyone getting in without a great struggle. This is what Joseph did. You can still see the tombs of this sort in the Middle East. The fact that Joseph requested Jesus' body from Pilate and that Pilate granted the request shows well enough that Jesus was indeed dead. Roman soldiers and governors didn't go in for half measures when it came to carrying out capital sentences. Any possibility that they had let a condemned rebel leader escape death can be left out of the question. Likewise, the fact that Jesus' main disciples had nothing to do with the whole procedure, but were in hiding, indicates well enough that they wouldn't have been in a position to steal the body. Nor indeed could anybody else, the chief priests, anxious to avoid such a thing, obtain a guard of Roman soldiers from Pilate. They themselves sealed the stone to make sure that it wasn't moved. There remains the question of the identification of the tomb. Matthew is careful to note that the 2 women who went to the tomb on Easter morning were there on the Friday evening and saw exactly where it was. None of this, of course, proves that the Christian story is true, nor does the next chapter. From the very beginning there has been room for doubt, and many have taken that option. But Matthew is concerned that the doubt be located in the right place. There was no confusion about the details of the burial. If you're going to doubt whether Jesus was raised from the dead, it must be because you doubt whether the living God could or would do such a thing. For Israel's Messiah, the one on whose shoulders rested the weight of the world's salvation, that is what is at stake. As we watch the burial of Jesus and meditate on his going before us into the tomb, which is the common lot of humanity, we stand in awe once more at the thought that he, alone of all the human race, has found the way through it and out into God's new world beyond. Matthew can hardly wait, we may imagine, to take the story into the next chapter, where all is revealed. So for reflection today, how does the central claim of the early church that Jesus was raised from the dead form the foundation of Christian faith and life? And contemplate the implications of Jesus' triumph over death and his entrance into God's new world beyond the tomb. How does his resurrection inspire awe and hope in your own life? Reflect on the profound significance of Jesus' victory over death and how it affects your understanding of salvation and the power of God. See you tomorrow, guys.